Hey, welcome back. In this video, we will cover how to write tests for negative scenarios such as when the authentication fails or when you do not send the right or required payload with the request. We will be touching all of that in this video, so let's get started. Hey there, welcome to Automation Bro. If this is your first time on the channel, thank you for clicking on this video. I create new content related to testing and automation every week, and if this is something you're interested in, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of my newly uploaded content. Alright, so far we have been writing tests for all the positive scenarios, or you can call it a happy path. And while that is good, with our API tests we should also make sure that we are covering some negative scenarios too, as that will help us making sure that our APIs are secure and it's functioning as it should. So let's take a look at some example. So I'm here on the website gorest.co.in. What I'm going to do is just scroll down, and if you notice here there are a bunch of 400 error codes over here, or response code as you want to call it. So anything with 400s, usually that means something went wrong with our API call. So, and same thing for 500 too. So they have a really nice description here. So they talked about with 400, this is caused by various actions by the user, such as providing invalid JSON in the request body or some invalid action parameters. So this is basically when you're sending some wrong data, as that's when the API would end up throwing a 400. And then we have 401. Now this one we have looked at before. It's if you do not provide your token, you'll get this 401 error. And this is the most common one. So we will try to create a test for this one. And then we have something called 403. And this is mainly, for example, the authenticated user is not allowed to access that endpoint. So let's say in that scenario, if you do not have access to, maybe that user does not have access to access someone else's comment. So in that particular scenario, the API will throw us 403. 404 is when that API does not even exist or the resource does not exist. And we saw that when we deleted something, we got this 404 error. And 405 is when the method is not even allowed. So you're trying to do, let's say, a put request on something which is not even allowed, or post request on something. And then there's some more, which is 415. 422 is another one we will look at. This is the one where we send in the data, but our validation fails. So to give you example, we're trying to create a user, but we do not provide the, let's say the name or the some other user related details, for example, gender. So in that way, we would get that 422 error. And we will also look at this when we will be creating a test. And then 429 is something that people add for rate limiting. So just as a side note here, like every time when you hit this API, like this is an external API, right? So they are obviously maintaining this. So you got to make sure that you're not hitting it way too many times here, or in fact doing some kind of a performance test where you're hitting the same API like hundreds or thousands of times under a minute or so. In that scenario, they will actually block you and would start throwing you 429 error. And that's usually what's called the rate limiting. And 500 is when the server fails and the gorest.co.in, something went wrong there, and they would just throw us the 500 error that something went wrong. So what we're going to do is let's try out our 401. I'm going to go to REST console. And this one is pretty straightforward. I'm going to try to do a post on, let's say, our /post API. And here I know that I do not have access. Just keep in mind that I'm not logged in here. If you notice, I'm not logged in. So if I hit send request here, there you go. We'll get this 401 authentication field because you're not logged in, right? So that's why we'll get this error. And the other ones will be, for example, if I'm trying to create a post but I do not provide a proper body, that time I will get a 422 error. So what I'm going to do is head over to our code section and we will try to create some test. Okay, so I'm back here in our code section. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to scroll down, and then I would just simply create a new describe block. So I can create it here, and then I can just, let's say, name this one our negative test, and I can create an it block, which would be, let's start off with doing a 401 validation. So it's actually 401 authentication field. We'll create one for this one, and we will do exact same thing that we were doing here, right? We were trying to create a post, but instead the difference would be that I'm not going to be passing in the authentication token, and let's see how what will that throw us. I'm going to skip the expect for now, and then token I won't send. And what I'm going to do here is, or you can also do, instead of not sending token, you can send an invalid token. That's another scenario that you can try out. So everything else is same. I'm sending out the data, I have the post request here, but no token this time. And I'm just going to try to print and see what it will give us. By the way, keep in mind I'm using async await, so I used await here, so I also need to add in the async, make this function a sync function. So there you go. And that's pretty nice. It's just one liner here. All right, so I'm going to try to run this. I will do .only to just run this test. And I can run this by doing npm test. All right, so we ran a test and it passed. Obviously, we didn't have any assertion here, so that was expected. And if I just scroll up, what I did was end up printing the entire response here, but what I just wanted was to print my body. But anyways, if you look at the body over here, we're getting the code which is 401, and then we have the data which is authentication failed, and that's perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. We were trying to test if we do not pass in the token, we should get authentication failed. So what I'm going to do is quickly add in our assertion here. I'm going to remove this and then just change this to say the response body.code should be 401. And I can say this should equal, remove this and change this to 401. And then I'll add another one. This time it would be for data.message. And I can verify that it should be authentication failed. So I will just add that in. Okay, and if I run this, this should pass for us. All right, there you go. It's working. So that's pretty good. So we have our first test down. And this is really helpful, guys, because at the end, we want to make sure that, hey, if you do not have a proper token, you should not be able to hit the API, right? That makes sense. Like, we do not want anyone to be just going in and creating a post. We only want authenticated users to be able to go in and create a post. So this test is really good and it's a really nice check. So whenever you're doing your API testing, to make sure to add in such kind of test instead of just going in and verifying the functionality. So the next one we're going to take a look at is, okay, I have this time, let's say my token, but I'm sending the wrong data. So at this point also I should get an error back, and the error that I should get back, that should be 422. So let's go ahead and verify that. And for 422, it's mainly that the data validation failed. So we will also add that in. So I'm going to just quickly copy this because I don't want to waste too much time here. And then paste it here. Just say 422. And then I would change this to validation failed. And what I'm going to do is, instead of this, I'm just going to, for example, not send the body this time, right? Now let's see what happens. But I do want to send my token. So I'm going to copy the token here. Put this here. All right. Now let's, in our body code, it should give us 422 back. And the message itself, well, I don't know what the message I'm going to get. So I'm going to ignore that for now. And I will simply just print this over here, just so I know what error message I will get back. And I will say Postgres. This time I'm going to put in the body. Now let's run to see if this works. And instead of for the whole thing to run, and we'll just run this particular test. And let me run this. Okay, so that worked. And let's see what the error we got. Okay, so this is pretty good, right? So we send that and it's actually telling us, hey, that you did not provide the body and the body cannot be blank. In this scenario, like obviously we didn't provide the body, right? So it's saying the body cannot be blank. And that's pretty good. And that's a good way to check that someone should not be able to create a post through the, when they're not actually sending the body. So this is a good way to check. And you can do the same thing for, let's say, title and the user ID too. So what I'm going to do is just quickly add this assertion over here. So I will say, okay, the response data dot field should be body because that's what I actually checked for. And this should be body. Then the next one, the message should be body can't be blank. Or can't be blank, just that. And I'm going to fix this by changing it to double quotes. Okay, so that's good. And if I just run this, it should work for us. So something failed here. Let's make sure what failed. It's saying undefined to equal body, and that's probably because, okay, so one thing I forgot to do was, if you notice, this is an array, right? Because let's imagine if you also don't pass in the title, it's going to give us multiple error messages. It's going to say, okay, field body is not there, but also field title is not there. So I need to make sure that I'm putting it as an array. And that's a good one because we never actually verified that. And also not to mention that this is part of data, and I also forgot to add in the data here. So I'm going to do data and then it's array. So I'm going to pass in, okay, it's the first index, and then same thing over here, just change this to data 0 and dot message. Okay, and then let's run this, and this time it should work. Alright, so our test is working and we just still have this console log, which I can just remove from here. But we actually got our 422 validation failed and that's working as expected. We are verifying it through our session. Same thing we were doing for 401. So same way guys, for any request that you guys are working with, make sure to throw in some negative tests to make sure that API is performing as the way it should, as well as it's properly secure and no one should be able to access it without a right token or without sending unexact data. So try this out on your own and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Alright, in the next video, we will finalize our test by optimizing it a bit further, so make sure to check that video out. That's it for this one guys, I will see you in the next one.